I encountered the world's loneliest tree, and it whispers my name. I never should have opened that door. The chill from the outside rushed in, wrapping around me like a vice. It was just a tree, after all, or so I thought. I had stumbled onto it while wandering through the woods. The sun had dipped behind the clouds, leaving the world cloaked in a dim, eerie light. Shadows crept between the branches, whispering secrets I couldn't quite grasp. The air felt heavy, soaked in a dampness that wrapped around my lungs. There it stood, that tree gnarled and twisted, its branches clawing at the sky. It was magnificent yet unsettling, as if it bore the weight of 1,000 lost souls. The faint smell of decay lingered around it. I could almost hear the tree sighing, its bark folded like old skin, cracked and oozing something dark. I felt a shiver race down my spine as I approached. The ground crunched beneath my feet. Twigs snapped like bones. My heart thudded, a steady drumbeat of dread. It's just a tree, I reminded myself, but something felt off. The wind picked up, whipping through the branches, and I thought I heard my name, just a breath, barely audible, weaving through the rustling leaves. It sent chills through me. I stepped closer, drawn in by something unseen. A low moan seemed to echo from its hollow trunk. Had the wind changed? It felt alive, pulsating with energy or fear. My pulse quickened. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. Was I being watched? Then I saw it. A thin wisp of fog curling around the base of the tree. It glowed, faintly luminescent, as if beckoning me forward. No, I thought, pulling back. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't just wind anymore. They were voices. Someone was calling me. The ground trembled slightly, and the tree creaked as if it were awakening. My hands trembled, squeezing my phone for comfort. But I didn't want to look away, paralyzed by a mix of fear and curiosity. What was buried beneath those roots? What stories were trapped within that darkened bark? And then, in the corner of my vision, I saw it, a shadow moving close, skirting just beyond the tree's reach. Anxiety clawed at my throat. I turned, heart racing. Nothing, just darkness. But the whisper was still there, a soft caress on the back of my neck. The tree moaned again, and the ground shook more violently now. I stumbled back, my back hitting the door I had opened. It slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness. I could feel it, something was coming. Something that didn't belong to this world. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness suffocated me as I stood before the door, the weight of the unseen pressing against my chest. I risked a glance back at the tree, its silhouette looming against the faint light, branches quaking as if in anticipation. The whispers grew distorted, intertwining into a cacophony that echoed like phantoms weaving a sordid melody. I fumbled for the handle, the metal ice-cold against my skin, yet it wouldn't budge. Panic surged as the realization settled in. I was trapped inside this sudden, claustrophobic nightmare. I turned my attention back, toward the creeping fog curling around the roots like spectral fingers. It pulsed and thickened, bringing with it a rancid, coppery smell that made my stomach churn. And then, the whispers sharpened, coalescing into a single, agonized scream that reverberated through the air. It resonated somewhere deep within the forest, a tether to all that was lost. Gripped by fear, I pressed my back harder against the door, bewildered by a traitorous pull toward the tree as if it craved my essence. The ground began to tremble more violently, and the whispers muted, merging into low, guttural growls, garbled and chilling. I could feel the vibrations travel up through my feet, connecting my heartbeat with the pulse of the earth. Shadows writhed and twisted along the ground, forming outlandish figures that snapped at the edges of my vision. I couldn't tell if they were alive or just figments of my encroaching madness. Suddenly, a branch snapped violently, and a bough bent sideways, revealing a hollow within that gaped like an open maw. It radiated an aura that beckoned and repelled in equal measure. I felt a compulsion to draw closer to peer inside, but then the air shifted. A deeper cold settled, as tangible as the fog itself. I shivered, feeling eyes upon me, though when I looked, nothing emerged from the darkness beyond the tree. My mind raced. The whispers softened, turning conspiratorial, coaxing me to stay, to listen, to comprehend, yet terror swayed me in the opposite direction. Get out. The command was a thunderous roar, and I jumped as it ricocheted through me. It came from the depths of the hollow, vibrating my bones, the urgency clawing at my sanity. The voices echoed, merging again into a symphony of sorrow and rage, rising to a deadly crescendo. As I struggled against the door, it pulsated with life, an ungodly feedback of my desperation. Whenever my chest tightened with the hopelessness of escape, I felt warmth waft from the crack below, not the warmth of sunlight, but an uncanny heat, like that of blood spilling upon the earth. "Help!" I shouted, my voice battling the encompassing dark, but I knew even as I called, I was alone. No one ever came to help those lost in the grasp of horrors that thrived here. The tree trembled again, shedding bark like ancient skin, revealing a soft, molten core that pulsed rhythmically. My heart raced. What had been so plainly a tree now seemed a portal to hidden realms. A warped face emerged in the hollow, shadowed and grotesque, its lips curling in a mocking smile. "Join us," it whispered enticingly, the voice like a dark lullaby seeping into the recesses of my mind. That I recoiled, rediscovering the urgency to flee, but my legs felt heavy, enmeshed in a psychic glue that anchored me in place. The air around me thickened, and a howling wind cascaded through the grove, something sinister surfacing within the chaotic dance of shadows. "Come to me," it bellowed, "and feel the memories of their torment." With one frantic, forceful shove, I hurled myself against the door, the wood shattering beneath my weight. I spilled out into the cold, damp underbrush of the forest, gasping, my heart racing. But my respite was short-lived. In the sudden hush, a fine mist rose from the ground, spiraling into the air like thin fingers curling and twisting. Horror gripped me as I realized the whispers had not stopped. Now, they flew at me like a vengeful swarm, weaving wild stories of pain, loss, and betrayal. Then I noticed a figure standing near the tree, partially obscured by the fog. Their silhouette was unmistakable, eerily familiar. I squinted, and cold dread slithered through me as recognition dawned. It was someone I had lost long ago, someone entwined with the very fabric of this haunted woods. "Help me," their voice echoed through the mist, trembling with despair. My breath hitched again, and as the fog thickened, engulfing me, I felt the sensation of countless hands gripping at my arms, pulling me toward the tree, toward the darkness that whispered my name. Before I could scream, the ground beneath me licked my heels, and I was being dragged backward, the tree reaching for me with gnarled branches like skeletal hands. I was falling into the deeply woven whispers, plunging into the abyss where the secrets of the world's loneliest tree lay waiting. And then, in a flash, everything went black, leaving me with one horrifying realization: I was not alone. The deep blackness enveloped me like a shroud, stifling my senses and stealing my breath. In that hollow void, fleeting memories flickered through my mind like images on a broken reel, faces of joy interspersed with screams and shadows. The cold constricted, squeezing my chest until I was sure I would break. I fought against it, my limbs thrashing wildly, but there was no ground, no walls, only an endless depth. A sudden chill raced through me, pulsing like the heartbeat of the void, and I was hurled violently toward the light, fracturing through the darkness. I emerged not into daylight, but into an exaggerated twilight, a grotesque reflection of the forest I had known, where the trees bore gnarled faces twisted in agony. That I lay sprawled on the ground, the damp leaves soaking my clothes, and just as I gathered breath to scream, the familiar figure loomed above me, an ethereal version of my long-lost sister, her translucent body appearing more insubstantial than ever, as if she were a thought attempting to escape reality. "Please, you have to help me," she breathed, her voice trembling with the same desperation I had heard echoing through the tree. Shadows pulsed around her, swirling as if they were alive, writhing with conspired malice. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs, torn between instinct and the need for clarity. Is this real? Are you? My throat closed around the question. Did I truly wish to know if I was simply conversing with a figment of my imagination or something more sinister? Run, she shrieked, her face twisting in torment as the shadows split open before her, revealing pillared gateways formed by twisting roots and shadows that whispered the names of the forsaken. A visceral knot tightened in my stomach. The tree. It embodied everything I feared, a heart of darkness thriving where memories were knotted together. No, I can't leave you, I shouted, my voice swallowed by the gaping maw of night surrounding her. Leave while you still can. Her image flickered, and I saw the anguished pleading darting through her eyes. Desperation coursed through me, mingling with terror, as I felt the grip of despair slide toward me like a predator in the underbrush. Without another glance, I bolted toward the veil of trees, weaving between skeletal boughs and tangles of thorns. I could hear them stir, the whispers growing into shrieks that filled my mind with distorted screams of regret and vengeance, echoes warning me of the everlasting darkness. The moments crashed against one another as I stumbled deeper into the forest. The air thickened, and shapes darted at the edges of my vision, figures entwined in an eternal dance of suffering, stretching and contorting over the ground, as if pleading for solace, yet finding none. They reached for me with phantom fingers, brushing against my skin and leaving trails of icy fear. I lunged through an arch formed by two twisted branches, and that s when the ground heaved beneath me, as if the very earth was enraged by my attempt at escape. I collapsed onto my knees, hands clutching the damp soil. And then, I heard it, a voice resonating deep within the very roots beneath me. You cannot run from your past. It devours all. Cold waves of dread crashed over me, and the shadows swelled, collapsing in on themselves, folding tightly as a dark storm converged. With each pulse of life the trees moaned, and the whispers conjoined into a single, horrifying laugh that sent shards of ice through my veins. Join us. They beckoned, an unholy symphony wrapping around me like a straitjacket. As the air shimmered with unseen entities, I felt someone pressing at the edges of my mind, clawing to slip in and weave through my thoughts. The shadows thickened, coiling around my limbs, stealing away my very essence, dragging me closer to the ground, where the roots twisted and squirmed, eager to tighten their grip. No, stay away from me, I cried out, my voice barely breaking through the cacophony. But the laughter grew louder, unbearable, drowning my resolve, offering a promise of untold secrets, a dreadfully tempting invitation. My vision blurred, the trees around me beginning to twist and change shape once more, their bark dripping with something viscous and dark. There was no escape now. They were rising, swaddled in the tempest, forming a monstrous thrall of agony that surged toward me. I grasped at the earth, fighting against the pull of forgotten memories that whirred around me like vultures. But just as I felt the cold reality of despair grasp my heart, the lights erupted, flashing through the darkness like furious flares, illuminating a face among the chaos, a warning visage that I recognized from before. Leave now, they screamed, and before I could register the depth of it all, the ground beneath me tore apart, ripping wide and cold, and I was falling into yet another abyss, a dark pit where the whispers grew sharper, coiling around my thoughts. Reality flickered like a dying ember, and then, finally, all fell silent. The darkness had swallowed me whole again, leaving a lingering echo of my screams dangling in the air. Only this time the whispers were no longer calling my name. They were chanting it like a mantra, readying a welcome long awaited. I woke up, gasping, the taste of damp earth heavy on my tongue, and the chilling sensation of cold winds lacing through my hair. I pushed myself up with shaking hands, the ground still pulsing like a living, breathing entity beneath me. I was abandoned in a dense thicket, the trees now horrid giants looming above, their bark twisted grotesquely, faces staring blankly down at me, mouths eternally open in silent despair. I steadied myself to stand. The ground around me seemed to tremble, and sudden flashes of light buzzed to life among the branches, illuminating the alien landscape for fleeting moments. Shadowy figures darted at the periphery of my vision, weaving in and out of reality like wraiths, each movement a reminder of the disorientation clinging to my mind. I stumbled forward, my heart pounding against my ribcage, desperate for some sign of hope, some notion of normalcy. But as I moved deeper into the forest, the voices returned. They rose and ebbed like a tide, overlapping each other in a tangled web of whispers that crept beneath my skin, twisting themselves around my thoughts. "Join us, embrace the void," they taunted, a cruel symphony of grief and longing. "You belong to us." I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block out the anguished cacophony boiling inside my skull, but it seeped in. I could feel them clawing at my consciousness, begging me to surrender, to let go of the tether that still held me to the world I once knew. My sister's face floated before me, her ghostly visage flickering like a mirage. "Help me," she implored, a haunting echo of twilight despair rising from my memory. But now I was ensnared in this forest of shadows, and each step I took felt like a treachery against the sacrifice she had made. Every twist and turn led me deeper into uncharted territory, toward a tree that rose like a monument of sorrow against the darkening sky. Its branches twisted upward, clawing at the heavens, but never reaching them, leaving only a far-reaching shadow behind. The trunk was scarred and gnarled, blackened by some ancient grief. It emitted an otherworldly glow, drawing me closer. As I approached, the whispers grew strong, pulsating against my heart like a drumbeat, reverberating through the air as if the blood within me responded in kind. "Here lies the truth," the voice reverberated with an otherworldly resonance, smooth like silk, yet rippled with malice. "Find it, sanctification awaits." I reached out to the trunk, fingers ghosting over the viscous sap that oozed from the bark, warm and thick, clinging to my skin like a lover's embrace. The moment I made contact, the world shattered. Visions surged before me, fleeting images of my past. Joyous family gatherings morphing into shadows of my own failures. Moments of love twisted into profound heartbreak. I choked on my thoughts as every cherished memory flared like a fire before being extinguished. I gasped, trying to back away, but a force deeper than the roots of the tree propelled me forward, dragging me into the core of my own darkness. Amid the memories, I glimpsed her again, my sister's face overlaying the chaos, eyes wide with terror and pleading for release. "No, you cannot take her," I screamed, but the tree merely absorbed my rage, the roots shifting as if in delight. Soft laughter echoed through the branches, and figures emerged from the shadows, twisted versions of my family, their faces masks of longing and despair. They beckoned me closer, wrapping their arms around me, pulling at my heart. "Come home, darling," they murmured in harmony. "Join us in the embrace of our sorrow." I felt their cold fingers of memory tightening around my throat, squeezing the breath from my lungs. In that moment of anguish, the reality around me shifted again. The barren tree began to pulse, the darkness inside it glowing with red intensity, as if feeding on my fear. And then, an unearthly roar erupted from within, splintering the air as another shadow, a silhouette too vast to comprehend, began to rise from the ground. The whispers crescendoed, chanting my name with longing, merging into a terrible hymn that clawed at the very edges of my sanity. "Flee!" shouted a voice amid the chaos, breaking through the haunting melody of despair. It was unfamiliar but loud, a piercing call that surged into my consciousness, igniting a flickering flame of resolve. Just as I attempted to break free from the grasp of the piercing shadows, the ground split beneath me with an ear-splitting crack, revealing an abyss of writhing roots and hollering souls born of shadows. In a moment of sheer instinct, I felt the pulse of something deep within me, the urge to survive. I lunged backward, adrenaline propelling my body against the tree as it recoiled, the whispers now morphing into howls of rage. Suddenly, everything lurched. The ground heaved again, uprooting the tree from its cursed soil, and the air filled with the stench of decay, a monumental horror awakening that threatened to swallow me whole. I staggered back, half-turned, entranced by the horror layered in shadows, and then I saw it, a glimpse of a face rushing toward me from the depths, eyes glowing with an insatiable hunger, a grin stretched impossibly wide. The tree was not just a tree. It was a gate. "Where are you going?" It beckoned, uniting despair with laughter as tendrils of shadows reached for me, snaring my feet. In that moment, with the ground collapsing around me, I felt the pull of my past clenching tighter than ever. Time twisted as reality bent. I was caught between what I feared and the truth of what I had become. "Help me," came a distant, distorted voice. I knew that voice. It was my sister, echoing through the void. But I was losing myself, the chant of my name reverberating louder, drowning out the last vestiges of hope. The roar crescendoed, and as the world dropped away, I plummeted into a realm where memories twisted into nightmares, spiraling deeper as I vanished into the darkness. The whispers turned into screams, but this time, all I could feel was the suffocating embrace of the forest, claiming me as its own, whispering secrets no one should ever hear. And then it all stopped. Everything fell silent. But then I heard it again. The chant rose to a frenzied pitch, and among the cacophony, my own name echoed back disturbingly, making one thing painfully clear: I was not alone. Darkness hung thick in the air, nearly palpable, as I hovered on the precipice of consciousness. My mind was fogged, filled with the fragmented echoes of laughter and grief that intertwined to form an eerie lullaby. I remained suspended in the void, a ghost tethered to its own despair, trembling on the edges of reality. Pausing on the threshold of the unknown, I could feel the imprinted shadows of the forest stretching over me like the weight of forgotten sins. As my senses began to sharpen, the roar of the unseen horror faded, replaced by an unsettling whisper that wound around my core, circling like a predator sizing up its prey. I blinked, forcing my eyes open to a scene smeared in twilight. The tree loomed, now a grotesque silhouette against the dimming sky, branches extending like skeletal fingers reaching for the heavens I inexplicably craved. An oppressive silence surrounded it, the once taunting voices muffled to a murmur, as if the presence that claimed me had grown wary that I felt it, then a crawl of prescience that danced across my skin. I was not where I had once been. The ground felt different beneath me, alive and breathing, pulsating with a heartbeat that harmonized with the echo of my own. As I stood, a churning fear clutched at my chest, choking the last remnants of courage I possessed. One step stirred the silence, and with it came a sinking feeling. I wasn't merely in a forest. This was a realm of despair, a sanctuary for the damned, woven with the threads of lost souls. My pulse quickened as shadows flickered at the corners of my vision, mere flashes of something that shouldn't exist. "Embrace what you are," a voice beckoned softly, its tone soothing yet chilling. It curled around me, wrapping me in a shroud of familiarity, a voice I recognized, a voice from a time long past. "Anita?" I whispered, hope mingling with dread. The name slipped through my lips, fragile against the encroaching dark. "Join us," the forest responded, the hushed murmurs weaving back into a collective cacophony that sent tremors through my bones. I was being beckoned, a dark song playing to the rhythm of my heart. With every note, I felt a stronger pull. Summoning my resolve, I took a step forward, heart racing, fueled by memories of happier times. A fleeting image of my sister's bright smile pierced through the shadows, illuminating the path before me. I took another step. A twisted tendril reached from the shadows, curling around me, emanating a cold pull that both terrified and entranced. "Flee!" the distant voice shrieked again, this time sharp and insistent, shattering my moment of clarity. My heart raced against the deafening whispers that began to rise within me like a flood. Hands trembled at my sides as I felt the ground shake subtly beneath my feet. It was no longer just a feeling. The earth shifted as if disturbed by an unseen wrath, as something began to awaken. I looked up, and my breath caught in my throat. The tree began to move, groaning as its roots fought against the soil that had bound it for so long. With every heave of the twisted form, shadows peeled away, unveiling pale, human-like figures trapped in its dark embrace. Faces twisted in anguish reached out to me, mere apparitions cursed to linger in this liminal space, chained to the point between life and oblivion. I trembled in response to their silent cries, unable to comprehend their torment, but thoroughly entangled in my own. "Help us!" they screamed in a collective moan, each voice exiting the depth of despair as if attempting to shatter the barrier between the living and the dead. broken souls, but then I noticed one figure stood apart from the others, face cloaked in shadows, yet somehow distinct. It was insistent and desperate. I squinted, my heartbeat a roaring drum in my ears. A faint light flickered, revealing strands of hair glistening like bright stars lost in the black sky. It had to be her. Anita, I uttered, desperation clawing at my throat. As I reached towards her, the world darkened further, shadows thickening, twisting into grotesque couples who pulled at one another with broken promises and shattered dreams. Don't listen. Her voice rose above the rest, rippling with urgency. The tree it feeds on pain. Don't give in. But even as she pleaded, the shadows pressed closer, urging me to close the distance, to embrace them, to let go of everything that held me to the world I once knew. Join us. Become like us. They shrieked, pain mingling with ecstasy, the phrasing merging into a maddening rhythm. The very earth began to pulse beneath me, a heart beating in sync with my fear. Rooted in place, I struggled between the allure pulling me toward the glowing shadow of Anita and the writhing darkness that enveloped me like a second skin. Come here, roared the voice, shaking the shade of tranquility that lingered in my foggy mind. It surged with malevolence, and I could feel its power thrumming at the edges of reality, as if the very air around me wanted to claw at my soul. Just as the pull of despair threatened to engulf me, I glanced back at the gnarled tree. Its bark rippled, and with an impossibly wide grin, mouth agape, I could see the shapes of anguished souls swirling inside its twisted core, veils of darkness peering hungrily at me. And then, in one terrifying moment, the root system lurched violently, sending a purposeful shockwave through the ground. I stumbled back, caught between life and the netherworld, but in that instant, I swore I heard Anita's voice one last time, echoing the only truth that mattered. Run, run. In a primal instinct, my body lunged forward, escaping life's chains and truth's seductive grasp. And yet, as I dashed deeper into the forest, breathless and lost within the shifting shadows, one final whisper surrounded me, swirling in a horrific crescendo. Your name is ours now. In that instant, the world around me froze, crystallizing the moment of despair with a desolate clarity as I felt a pair of eyes, those unyielding, glow with malice from the shadows. The very fabric of my soul quivered, and I realized as I turned to flee that there was no longer any going back. I was being hunted. The air thickened, oppressive as I darted deeper into the labyrinth of trees, branches clawing at my flesh like skeletal fingers yearning for my warmth. My heart thundered a frantic rhythm, each beat drowned out by the echo of those whispers swirling around me. The howling wind carried fragmented sentences, each more sinister than the last. It's too late, and you are not alone, intertwining with fading echoes of Anita's desperate call. Branches cracked and sighed, flooded with a seeping darkness that clung to my skin like an unwanted cloak. I stumbled through an unending cycle of horror, drawn to the pulse of the tree that had rejected me but craved my essence. With fevered breaths, I cast glances over my shoulder, half expecting the grotesque figures to surge from the shadows and seize me. That pull, a malevolent thread wound tightly around my soul, urged me back towards the heart of the forest. In the thickening murk, unexplainable shapes flickered in my peripheral vision, hunched and eerily human, frozen in agonized poses as if trapped in time. Relentlessly, they watched with hollow, gleaming eyes, begging me to stop to join their eternal lament. As if sensing my wavering resolve, the earth trembled again, signaling that my flight was in vain. Deep down, I felt a grim satisfaction from their suffering. They were all ensnared within this nightmarish paradise, and with every moment that passed, my own essence was being twisted under its weight. Help us! The voices symphonized once more, their cries now a medley of sorrow and wrath. Help us find peace. Yet peace was a distant dream, obscured by the incessant shadows and the dictatorial tree that laughed with the rustle of its leaves that I pressed onwards, praying for the way out, as despair swelled in the pit of my stomach. Suddenly, I broke through the dense foliage and stumbled into a clearing draped in silvery fog. An unnatural stillness enveloped the space, broken only by frightened breaths that escaped my lips. In the center of the clearing stood another tree, starkly different from its brethren. Its bark shimmered, shimmering like coarse silk, adorned with twinkling lights clinging desperately to its form. The roots snaked in elaborate knots, shaping an intricate web of glistening strands. It held an allure, glistening with an intoxicating beauty that beckoned me closer. But there was a familiar sadness trapped in those twinkling lights, a poignant whisper that brought dread sliding down my spine. "Save me," it murmured in a chime-like voice. A sense of profound despair washed over me as I stepped deeper into the clearing. This tree, its essence was not just entwined with the land, but with all who had lived. I could feel it carrying the weight of stories untold, of hope extinguished. How tantalizingly close I was to unraveling the enigma behind this haunting world. Yet, before I could reach for its glowing lights, the ground lurched. Tumultuous roots sprung to life, snaking toward me with a savage purpose. I recoiled as one entwined my ankle, yanking fiercely as I toppled to the earth. The once enchanting tree's radiant glow dimmed, its beauty morphing into a grimace. "Let her go?" Anita's voice pierced through the cacophony of despair, but it sounded further away now, like a distant star slowly extinguishing. The shadows began to writhe around me, submerging the clearing in a black mist that swallowed light whole. "I can save you," I cried desperately, tears of despair mixing with blood that trickled from the scratches on my arms. "Please, I will help you." In response, the shadows thickened, growing solid and twisted as they enveloped the beautiful tree. I felt the very air become charged with a malignant energy, imprinting my chest with a crushing weight that suffocated my cries. And then, within the depth of darkness, I glimpsed them, shapes contrasting with the void, flickering like candles in the dark. The grotesque figures surged forth, their faces now distinct, twisted in eternal writhing agony. "You belong to us. You will give in," they howled in unison, voices reverberating around me, shaking the earth beneath us. My pulse quickened, the rumble in my ears synchronizing with their crescendo, maddening, terrifying, insistent. As I struggled against the root, wrenching, I caught sight of Anita's shadow merging with theirs. "Don't give up," she yelled, a flicker of hope in her eyes. But the shimmering lights from the enchanting tree faded, devoured by the encroaching darkness. The figures unraveled into a morbid dance, laughter mingled with sorrow, beckoning me forward with their outstretched arms, each urging me to give in to despair. Fear rippled through me as they tantalized. "Join us, become one of us." I could feel the cold breath of the void guiding me toward them, pulling me closer with a magnetic force, leaving behind only the echo of my former self. "No, please," I whispered, fighting the inevitable. Tension surged through the air, and just as it reached its zenith, the wind howled a piercing shriek that swallowed the cacophony of haunting pleas. And then came a chilling calm. The trees around me fell silent, frozen in a tableau of despair as the essence of the forest turned towards me. I took a shivering breath, preparing to scream as a single light flickered from the heart of the alluring tree, piercing the darkness, a solitary hope amid impending doom. In that moment, I felt hands cold, ethereal wrap around my wrists, pulling me into the shadows. "Time to join us," a voice rasped, twisting my name into a ghastly harmony, and I let out a final cry of defiance as I was consumed by darkness. It was in that swirling void that I finally understood. I had become a part of this wretched symphony, and it would never let me go. I was forever bound, the haunting whispers of countless souls echoing my name. The darkness closed in around me, a smothering blanket that chilled my very essence. Freezing tendrils crept across my skin. I could hardly draw breath as I felt myself slipping away into the abyss. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, resonating with a cruel intimacy, each one laced with exultant glee. "Another lost soul," they sang, their voices an enrapturing melody that spiraled through the shadows. Another story entwined within the roots of the world's loneliest tree. I fought against the grip that held me, raking my nails against the unseen hands, but they merely tightened, feeding on my fear. Suddenly, a memory ignited in my mind as a fleeting image of Anita, of laughter and sunlit days. Was it all a mere fabrication? I blinked rapidly, desperately holding on to the warmth her memory provided. but the darkness tried to consume it, morphing sweetness into bitterness, twisting joy into despair. Let her go? A resonant voice broke through the malevolent harmonics. Anita's voice, commanding yet drenched in sorrow. The fog thickened momentarily, releasing its grasp just enough for me to gasp as I felt strength surging from my core. "Anita!" I screamed, the sound tearing at the silence, chasing away remnants of despair. "Where are you? Keep fighting. It's feeding on your doubt," she shouted, her voice a beacon in a stormy sea. But the shadows retaliated violently, crashing in around me, drowning her words in a wave of cold, crippling dread. Suddenly, the world shifted as I was thrown against something solid, a tree, but not the one I'd seen before. Its gnarled bark bore deep scars that wept dark sap, and the branches twisted over me like a mournful guardian. A shriek that blended sorrow and fury rose from its depths, reverberating through the very fabric of the forest. "Release her!" it bellowed, its voice grotesquely beautiful, entangled with agony. The shadows recoiled, quivering against the force of its wrath, but then they surged forward, amalgamating into a grotesque form, a nightmarish visage of all those trapped within. They pressed tighter, an insidious pulse rolling over me, forcing me to look into their hollow eyes. "You think you can escape? You belong to us, bound to our pain," they cried, laughter mingled with screams, pulling me deeper into the suffocating void. In response, the tree flared with a sickly light, illuminating the blackness. I felt a rush of warmth sweep through my trembling body, a spark of hope igniting against the encompassing dread. It was then that I glimpsed the truth imbued within its twisted roots. Each entangled story pulsed with life and loss, each soulful whisper, a desperate plea, and they called my name in a haunting symphony. "Give in," they urged, "and be free." I writhed against their grip, every fiber of my being resonating with a defiant cry. "I will not become you." My words echoed, ricocheting through the abyss, ricocheting against the world around me. And in that moment of defiance, the tree unleashed a storm of light, the roots below me splitting and cracking. I felt the ground tremble, reverberating with the heart of the forest. It was a last desperate plea from a being whose sorrow reached beyond the veil of time, its guardianship threatened by the darkness. The shadows shrieked in protest, their collective horror morphing into a terrifying visage, a writhing mass of despair, torment, and faces lost to time. "She's stronger than the rest," they hissed between their cackles, anger and surprise merging as the darkness hungrily pulled away from the light. I grasped the pulsating core of the tree, no longer just a tree, but a conduit of every lost spirit. I remembered Anita's laughter, how it bathed me in warmth, and as I held onto it, I felt pieces of hope cascading through me like rain, each droplet a fragment of strength against the yearning abyss. Let her go? The tree's roots pulsed with power, weaving together in an intricate dance that banished shadows, illuminating the contours of the nightmarish figures. But the darkness roared back with fury, and the forest seemed to convulse as it fought against itself, a war that annihilated stability, leaving chaos in its wake. And within that chaos, as the spirits clashed against the beauty of the tree, a vision emerged, a swirling vortex of shadows and light. I stared into its depths, and what I saw next shattered my resolve. Anita stood there, her form etched in sorrow yet radiant in defiance, the shadows swelling around her, gripping her body as she fought against their hold. "Help me," she cried, the sound a grotesque reverberation of despair as her eyes locked onto mine, that I could feel the pulse of her essence entwined with the trees, a tether that bound us across the sacred grounds. But her strength was waning, and the shadows surged, pulling her deeper into their deadly embrace. "Anita," I called, feeling the world around me blur, the energies collapsing into a singular moment of understanding. If I succumbed, we would both be lost. But if I fought, the chasm between us could very well tear the fabric of this dark realm apart. My heart racing, I lunged for the warmth of the tree's light, but the writhing specters of despair tightened their grip, pulling me into the void, my vision clouding with the screams of lost souls echoing in a cacophony. And just as I felt myself being torn away, the tree exploded in a blinding flash of light, illuminating the darkness with untold fury. I was suspended on the edge of reality between light and shadow, heart pounding as the world shattered around us. "Stay with me," Anita's voice implored, echoing through the surge of chaos, thin but clear like a gilded whisper in the dark. I lunged toward her against the tide of despair. The darkness howled, the trees shivered, and a single luminescent thread shot forth, each strand imbuing the air with strength and agony, unyielding as I grasped for my last ounce of hope. And then everything went black. The void enveloped me like an inescapable shroud, a silence so deafening it threatened to swallow my very identity. I floated within that suffocating blackness, the echoes of Anita's desperate call fading into a haunting whisper. The memories we shared twisted into apparitions, flickering like dying embers, leaving behind an emotional void more profound than the endless night. Gradually, the shadows began to shift around me, coalescing into dreadful shapes that slithered and writhed in the abyss. I felt their piercing gazes upon me, hungry and expectant, as if I were nothing more than a morsel suspended before a great feast. Whispers swarmed in my mind, each syllable a dagger of despair, promising glimpses of fractured truths if only I would let go of my resistance. Within that haze of dread, the ghostly figures unraveled before me, each one a lost soul, bearing the weight of memories long buried, trapped in an unforgiving purgatory. Their hollow eyes gleamed with unshed tears, reflecting the pain of a shared past, an unending cycle of anguish that clawed at my sanity. They reached out for me, spectral fingers brushing against my skin, igniting flares of dread that burned like ice in my veins. "Join us," they beckoned with raspy voices that echoed across the chasm. "Feel the solace of acceptance, the embrace of the forgotten." I grit my teeth, battling against the tide of their sorrow, desperately clinging to the fragments of light that flickered within my mind. The primal urge to submit gnawed at my resolve, but Anita's voice resonated in the back of my consciousness, a beacon of warmth urging me to claw my way back from the brink. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced, forming the specter of a man who stepped forth from their malevolence. His face was twisted with sorrow, carved into an expression of endless despair. Jagged scars marred his translucent skin, and as he fixed his gaze upon me, I recognized the shrouded memories he carried within him. "Don't be deceived," he warned, his voice trembling. "This place thrives on hope, the dimmest flicker of light. It will consume you. It's why we are trapped here." "I want to be trapped," I shouted, every syllable imbued with an intense defiance that shattered the silence like glass. "I have to save her." A gust of wind swirled through the void, wrapping around me like a serpent with a serrated edge, displacing the specter momentarily. Air whistled through the mass of shadows, creating a dissonant melody that pulsed with an eerie life of its own. The darkness fluttered as if momentarily unsettled by my words, twisting and distorting. There, within that chaos, the ground beneath me trembled and split, brandishing fragments of light that reached for me like spectral fingers trying to regain lost souls. A surge of energy reverberated through the abyss, anchoring the illumination within my heart, mingling it with the echoes of love I had for Anita. "Find her," the man urged, his voice drowning in the tempest of despair. "Your only hope lies in the truth. Find the world's loneliest tree." Before I could respond, the shadows surged forward, coiling around me with a ferocity that threatened to obliterate both my resolve and my understanding of reality. The tendrils clawed at my essence, and with a final desperate push, I hurled myself into the seething void, the light within me igniting like a beacon. Suddenly, green tendrils erupted around me, wrapping me in a cocoon of vibrant foliage. I gasped for breath, the sweetness of the air contrasting sharply with the recollections of the desolation I had just escaped. The world shifted, collapsing into a kaleidoscope of color and sound, revealing a grove of towering trees that resonated with life, each one whispering secrets through the rustling leaves. Yet, as I regained my bearings, horror erupted anew. Amongst the beauty, I spotted a monstrous figure lumbering between the trees, a grotesque amalgamation of bark and flesh, dragging its gnarled limbs as if weighed down by countless burdens, each stride echoing a sorrowful dirge that chilled me to the bone. At its base, the roots twisted like serpents, and beneath the undergrowth, I glimpsed shadows flitting past, a glimpse of lost souls desperately trying to escape. However, at the heart of the grove, tangling among the roots of the world's loneliest tree, I spotted a faint glow, swirling, a desperate light, pulsating erratically as if performing a frantic dance amidst a sea of despair. My heart leaped into my throat as clarity stormed through my mind. "Anita!" I cried, my voice slicing through the thick tension in the air like a knife. The warmth radiated from the light, and for a heartbeat, hope ignited anew within me. But as I stepped closer, the shadows lunged from the depths of the grove, a tidal wave of malevolence surging toward me, their wails piercing through the woodlands. They howled a warning, a cacophony of torture and grief that blurred into raging winds around me. "Flee, child!" the specter of the man screamed, but I was too far gone, the pull of the light too enchanting to resist. I lunged forward, heart racing, desperate to reach that radiant glow, and just as my fingers grazed the edge of light, the darkness engulfed me, swirling violently as the shadows dove into a frenzy of anguish. The world twisted once more, and all I could see was Anita's terrified face, eyes wide with an unspeakable dread that mirrored my own. "Help me! They want to let go!" she screamed, her voice splintering my resolve, weaving through the suffocating darkness. Before I could muster another breath, everything erupted into chaos again, the ground shuddering beneath us, mere moments away from collapsing into a crushing void where hope was a memory and despair was the only certainty. And with a horrifying realization, I understood this time, we were not just fighting for our lives, we were battling for our very souls. The moment my fingers brushed the periphery of the radiant glow, the world around me splintered into jagged shards of reality, twisting with an insatiable hunger. I was thrown into a tempest of darkness, the light sputtering behind me like a dying star, and Anita's scream echoed in my ears, a sound that dragged at the fabric of my heart. The shadows surged forth, swelling like a relentless tide, their forms shifting, coiling, and pressing against me, seeking to obscure the light I desperately craved. "No, stay back!" I bellowed, my voice swallowed by the cacophony of despair swirling around us. I in the fray. I felt a cool, sinewy grip fastening around my wrist, something alive, its grasp heavy with sorrow and unyielding agony. I turned, and a figure emerged, writhing from the gloom. It was a woman, her features contorted with pain, her hollow gaze a mirror of the countless lost souls trapped within this accursed grove. "You can't save her," she rasped, her voice a sepulchral whisper filled with an oppressive dread. "You must abandon the light. It will betray you. You must let go. Let go." I spat, fighting against the shadows that sought to drag me under. "I won't ever give up. I'll find her." As the shadows writhed like serpents, a profound chill slipped through my bones, freezing my breath in the air. The ground beneath my feet was warmed by the absent glow of hope, each thudding pulse a reminder of what we could lose. "Anita!" I shouted into the abyss, my voice emboldened by sheer desperation. The shadows paused, as if taken aback by the raw power of my invocation. But an unsettling shift began, a dark tremor snaking through the earth. The twisted figure of the tree loomed closer, its massive trunk enveloped in gnarled faces contorted in agony, each visage writhing, pleading, and crying for release, all remnants of those who had once come seeking solace, but were devoured by the tree's insatiable hunger. "Do not anger the arboreal beast," the woman implored, her fingers clawing at my arm, her desperation a palpable force. "It feeds on hope and despair alike. It seeks to keep you both." Frantic, I tore away from her grip and sprinted towards the heart of the grove, the pulsing light beckoning me closer. The shadows retaliated, crashing against my body like 1,000 icy hands seizing my every limb, their whispers igniting a tempest of fear within my soul. "Turn back! Turn back!" they shrieked, a chorus of torment that sank deep into my skin that I forced my legs to move, stumbling and gasping as I honed in on Anita's voice, which wove through the chaos like a lifeline. "Help me!" she cried again, the pain and terror in her voice melding into a haunting symphony that filled the air. Just a few steps more suddenly, the ground beneath me shuddered with malicious intent and split open, cracking like glass underfoot. The spectral shapes writhed in delight, slithering through the fissures like dark water, coiling up around my ankles and dragging me back into the depths of despair. A flicker of light caught my eye. It pulsed erratically, an urgent beckoning that propelled me forward, igniting a last flicker of hope. With a surge of adrenaline, I dashed forward, leaping over the jagged crevice that threatened to swallow me whole. Just as I reached the glowing orb, an iron grip clamped down on my heart, pulling me back momentarily into the suffocating void. I can't hold on, I cried as shadows surged around me, clawing at my mind, filling it with screams of the damned. My vision blurred, and the once vibrant grove faded into a sickly hue, the grotesque tree looming larger as it stretched to consume the remaining traces of light. With one final desperate push, I tore free and grasped the orb pulsating before me, its warmth wrapping around me like a blanket on the coldest of nights. As the light surged through my veins, I felt an overwhelming force rushing around me. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if burned. For a fleeting moment, it felt as if I could bridge the fractured realities separating me from Anita. The radiant glow fused with the shadowed whispers, creating a blinding halo that illuminated everything. Anita's face came into view, full of desperation and unyielding fear. "Don't leave me," she screamed, her eyes wide with pleas and sorrow. But before I could respond, darkness erupted all around us, consuming the grove with the rage of a storm. The tree's monstrous form shifted, twisting its bark into vicious appendages that lashed out like a monster woken from an eternal slumber, fixated now on me, its next prey. And just as the shadows swallowed the last flicker of light, I made a terrible, gut-wrenching realization. Anita wasn't just a victim of this darkness. She bore an ancient tie to this cursed grove that threatened to rip us apart forever. The oppressive weight of dread clawed up my throat as I understood I didn't just have to save her. I had to break the very bond that shackled her to this darkness. In that horrifying instant, the world stretched and twisted, and darkness surged forward like a hungry beast, ready to consume us both. And as I fought with every ounce of my being to cling to her, I heard it, a sinister whisper in the wind that froze my blood and tightened its grip on my heart, chilling me to the core. "The tree whispers your name," the voice taunted, heavy with malice. "And shadows never forget." The sun barely pierced through the heavy canopy overhead, swirling with an ethereal twilight that clung to the ground like a thick mist. I gasped, forcing myself back to reality that had morphed into a living nightmare. The world's loneliest tree, the one I once thought held the weight of lost souls, now felt like a portal to a fate worse than death. I stumbled through the oppressive darkness, heart racing, desperate to escape the clutches of madness that enveloped me. But Anita's face haunted me, a pale specter glowing against the inky shadows. I remembered her laughter, once bright and warm, now twisted and smeared with sorrow. I realized her bond to the tree wasn't just symbolic. It was her tether to the damned, to the very roots of this nightmarish realm. Panic surged through my veins. Could I truly save her, or would the darkness claim us both in the end? As the darkness pulsed with hunger, the whispers began again, a seething chorus of despair, choking my resolve. "Stay with us." A voice coiled around me like a snake, seductive yet sharp-edged. "Embrace your fate. Feel their pain. Feel her pain." Each word slashed at my mind, testing the limits of my willpower. "No," I screamed, defiance igniting within. With every ounce of strength, I focused on the flickering glow that represented Anita's spirit, the warmth within me igniting as I fought through the darkness. The radiant orb pulsed in my hands, emanating a light that slowly pushed back the shadowy tendrils snaking around my ankles. "Anita!" I yelled, chasing after the light that danced in and out of focus, illuminating my path. But the shadows retaliated, rearing back and lunging forward, hissing and clawing at the fleeting glow. They were relentless, determined, a tidal wave of desperation. I could practically smell the rot of their anguish as they closed in, dragged toward the dying ember of hope. Panic clawed at my throat, the whispers becoming raw, shrill. They wrapped around my heart, squeezing tighter. "You will never escape what you are," they wailed. "Join them. Join us." I pushed forward with gritted teeth, a swirling darkness threatening to drag me down. "You have no power over me," I shouted, tightening my grip on the glowing orb. Then, through dim light, I saw her Anita's translucent figure flickered before me, and for a moment, I glimpsed the truth tangled in her sorrowful gaze. "Help!" she cried, voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the storm. "You must break the chain binding me here. It's the only way out." There, among the grotesque whispers of despair, I felt at the very essence of the tree's malevolence coiling tighter around us, cloaked in the bitter remnants of hope. Armed with this understanding, I steeled myself, clenching the light like a lifebuoy. "I will save you," I breathed, my voice cracking but filled with fierce determination. The ground heaved beneath my feet, and the tree shuddered as if sensing the challenge I presented. It shifted, cracking open. I stumbled forward, an illusion of choices flickering through my overwhelmed mind. Shadows edged closer, and the cacophony grew fierce, drowning my doubt beneath an inky wave. "No," I shouted, drowning against the tide, and as I did, something in me snapped. With all my energy, I flung the orb into the swirling void around Anita. It erupted in a blinding flash, illuminating the forest in a kaleidoscope of colors, vaporizing the shadows that sought to consume us, revealing the monstrous truth intertwined with the roots. As light and darkness clashed, I glimpsed the chilling reality intertwined with the tree. The entities trapped within were not merely lost souls, but fragments of my own past. Faces I thought long buried, memories of despair and joy, of fear and laughter, twisted into grotesque forms pouring out from the tree's core. "No," I realized, a dawning horror settling in my gut. "They are bound to me." The voice resonated from every shadow, its echo stretching across the very fabric of my soul. "All that you feared, all that you lost, it clothes you, holds you. Don't you see? You belong to this darkness." A scream clawed at my throat as the truth crashed into me like a furnace. This tree, this horror, had fed off my memories, my regrets, and the unfulfilled pain of losing Anita. I hadn't stumbled into the horror, I had brought it with me. "Break free. Tear it away." Anita's voice sliced through the haze, and in that moment, I understood my only path. I had to face it head-on, to unravel the very threads binding us to this macabre prison. With renewed fervor, I hurled myself at the tree, reaching deep into its core, where shadows writhed like serpents. I felt the sensation of twisted fingers clawing at my skin, my essence waning, but I pressed on, drawing strength from the light that flickered beyond. "Release us," I screamed, feeling the memory of Anita within me, her spirit swirling in harmony with my resolve aflame against the night's abyss. "You will not take us." The voices roared, a cacophony of agony that thrummed like a heartbeat, but I held steadied, fueled by every ounce of love I had. The trees shook, groaning with discontent as the roots that tethered us started to loosen. I could see it, the shadows receding, forms twisting and unraveling in agonizing agony. The monstrous figure swayed, and I could feel nothing but an overwhelming rush of light. The shadows thrashed, writhing, screaming, until one horrendous echo rang clear. "You cannot escape your past. You are ours." But in the beauty of that devastation, I glimpsed Anita's smile, a golden glow flickering against the darkness, urging me forward. The figures of despair morphed into ethereal wisps, leaving behind a silence so thick it resonated in the atmosphere around us. And then it happened. The darkness shattered around me with a brilliant flash, the tree collapsing inward, its roots and ghastly forms spiraling in on themselves, tearing apart the fabric of my deepest fears. Sunlight poured into the grove as the shadows retreated, absorbed into the tree's hollow core. I collapsed to my knees, engulfed in the blinding light, the essence of despair disintegrating against the radiant warmth that swirled around me. And through the fading darkness, I heard it clearly, the last whisper of the shadows, a phrase haunting and lingering, seeping into my very essence, echoing long after the moment had passed. "You will always carry us hidden in the depths of your soul." When the light faded, I found myself alone in the forest, the tree gone. Yet in its absence remained a thin wisp of fog, lingering like a secret untold. Returning to the world felt surreal, as though stepping out of a nightmare into the light of day, except the shadows never truly left. They remained nestled within my very core, the echoes of their whispers lingering in the back of my mind, as I understood the price of my journey. I looked back at the grove no longer terrifying, yet hauntingly beautiful. Somehow, the solitude felt even deeper now, for I knew they would whisper my name forever, a reminder of a past entwined with the forgotten, a promise that darkness would always lurk, waiting for the moment to beckon. And as I walked away, their whispers followed, hauntingly echoing in the wind. You will never be alone again.